Sarah Chen stared at the readout on her maintenance tablet, then back at the ceiling-high stack of shipping crates in Cargo Bay 7 of Ganymede Research Station. Something wasn't adding up. "Hey, Dr. Vixtrill, your sensitive quantum interference detector, it's still showing those weird readings, right?" She called out to the towering crystalline alien scientist who was frantically adjusting settings on a wall-mounted console. The Arcturian's crystalline facets flickered with patterns of frustrated orange light. "Affirmative, Maintenance Officer Chen. The temporal variance patterns are completely destroying our ability to conduct precise measurements. 3 weeks of carefully calibrated experiments, ruined." Sarah walked closer to the shipping crates, her tablet continuing to show perfectly normal readings for standard cargo. She'd been dealing with alien technology long enough to know when something interesting was happening. After the Arcturians had established their research outpost on Ganymede 5 years ago, they'd brought with them technology that made human quantum computers look like pocket calculators. But now something was interfering with their ultra-sensitive equipment, and nobody could figure out why. "When did the interference start exactly?" Sarah asked, running her hand along the side of the nearest crate. "Standard Earth-made shipping container. Nothing special. Precisely 3 days, 7 hours ago." Dr. Vixtrill's crystalline body chimed with irritation. "The moment your Earth cargo shipment arrived." Sarah froze. 3 days ago. The weekly supply shipment from Earth. She remembered supervising the unloading herself. Mostly basic supplies, research equipment, and... "Dr. Vixtrill, has anyone checked inside these crates yet?" "Of course not. They are sealed with proper customs verification. Opening them without cause would violate 17 different protocols." The alien scientist's color shifted to a disapproving blue. Sarah pulled up the cargo manifest on her tablet. "Look, I know it's against protocol, but if something in these crates is causing the interference..." The Arcturian's crystals flickered thoughtfully. "You have a theory." "Maybe, but I need to open one to be sure." Sarah was already reaching for her utility belt, where she kept her universal crate opener. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals pulsed rapidly through several colors before settling on a resigned purple. "Very well. I will note in the log that I authorized this inspection under scientific emergency protocols." The crate's seal broke with a soft hiss. Sarah pulled open the lid and started laughing. "What is amusing about this situation?" Dr. Vixtrill moved closer, peering into the crate with all 7 of their sensory clusters. "It's bubble wrap," Sarah managed between chuckles. "The whole crate is filled with bubble wrap packaging." "Explain this bubble wrap." The alien scientist's crystals had taken on a curious yellow hue. Sarah reached in and pulled out a sheet of the plastic material. "It's just packing material. Air bubbles trapped between layers of plastic. We use it to protect fragile items during shipping." She popped one of the bubbles, making Dr. Vixtrill's entire crystalline form vibrate in surprise. "Fascinating." The quantum interference patterns just spiked dramatically. The alien rushed back to their console. "Do that again." Sarah popped another bubble. The readings on Dr. Vixtrill's console went wild. "Impossible," the alien scientist whispered. "The air pressure differential created by rupturing these bubbles is generating micro-scale quantum fluctuations. The plastic membrane must be acting as some kind of probability wave conductor." Sarah looked down at the ordinary sheet of bubble wrap in her hands. "Are you saying that this stuff, this completely ordinary packing material that humans have been using for over a century, is actually affecting quantum fields?" "Not just affecting them." Dr. Vixtrill's crystals were now pulsing with excited patterns Sarah had never seen before. "It's creating interference patterns that even our most advanced sensors struggle to compensate for. This changes everything we thought we knew about probability field manipulation." Sarah popped another bubble, watching the alien's console light up like a Christmas tree. "Well," she said with a grin, "I guess humans aren't quite as technologically primitive as some people thought." Indeed, Dr. Vixtrill's form had settled into a deep, thoughtful green. Though I suspect you had no idea your species was casually manipulating quantum fields with your packaging materials. None whatsoever. Sarah looked around at the dozens of crates still stacked in the cargo bay, all of them packed with bubble wrap. So, what do we do now? The alien scientist's crystals flickered with determination. Now, Maintenance Officer Chen, we conduct proper scientific analysis of this bubble wrap. And perhaps, they paused meaningfully, we keep this discovery between ourselves for the moment. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding the implications. If simple bubble wrap could affect advanced alien sensors this dramatically, there might be more to humanity's primitive technologies than anyone had realized. Agreed, she said, carefully resealing the crate. I'll help you set up a secure lab space. Something tells me we're going to need it. As they left the cargo bay, Sarah couldn't help but pop one more bubble, earning an amused color ripple from Dr. Vixtrill. Who would have thought that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic science would turn out to be packaging material? But then again, Sarah reflected, sometimes the simplest things held the most surprising secrets. The secure lab that Sarah and Dr. Vixtrill had set up in an unused storage module of Ganymede Station looked more like a child's birthday party gone wrong than a serious research facility. Sheets of bubble wrap hung from every available surface, creating a plastic tapestry that rustled softly in the recycled air. The patterns are consistent, Dr. Vixtrill announced, their crystalline form glowing with intense concentration. Each rupture of an air pocket creates a precise quantum disruption field. The effect is temporary, but the alien scientist paused, crystals flickering rapidly. When multiple bubbles are popped in sequence, the overlapping fields generate interference patterns that could theoretically mask entire regions of spacetime from standard detection methods. Sarah stopped her methodical popping of a fresh sheet of bubble wrap. Wait, are you saying we could use this to hide things from sensors? Not just sensors. Dr. Vixtrill's color shifted to a deep violet. Any detection system that relies on quantum probability mapping would be rendered effectively useless, including, they hesitated. Including what? Including the hegemony's enforcement grid. Sarah felt her blood run cold. The Drachnid hegemony, the dominant power in this sector of space, had established containment zones for human settlements, claiming it was for everyone's safety until humanity proved itself civilized enough for unrestricted space travel. Their enforcement grid was supposedly unbeatable technology. How sure are you about this? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Observe. Dr. Vixtrill activated a small device on their workbench. A holographic display showed a miniature representation of local space. This is a standard hegemony sensor sweep. They pressed another control, and a wave of energy passed through the display. Now, watch what happens when I introduce the bubble wrap effect. Sarah watched as Dr. Vixtrill popped a sequence of bubbles near the sensor. The holographic display dissolved into chaos, showing impossible readings and phantom signatures. Holy shit, Sarah breathed. We could use this to help the resistance colonies. Resistance colonies. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals pulsed with alarm. You mean the rumors of human settlements outside the authorized zones are true? Sarah met the alien scientist's gaze steadily. Let's just say I know some people who would be very interested in this research. The Arcturian was silent for a long moment, their crystalline form cycling through various shades of blue and green. Finally, they spoke. The hegemony's restrictions on human expansion have always troubled me. They claim it's for safety, but their methods, they trail off, are oppressive. Sarah suggested. Precisely. Dr. Vixtrill moved to their computer terminal. I've been analyzing the quantum disruption patterns. With proper timing and distribution, we could create a corridor of interference that would be completely invisible to hegemony sensors. Sarah walked over to look at the calculations. How much bubble wrap would we need? More than we have here. Much more. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals flickered thoughtfully. But if we could get it distributed to key locations, leave that to me, Sarah said, already pulling out her secure communicator. I know some cargo pilots who owe me favors. We can mark it as standard packing material. Nobody looks twice at that. The risk would be considerable, Dr. Vixtrill warned. If the hegemony discovers what we're doing. They won't, Sarah assured them. Because as far as they're concerned, we're just shipping primitive Earth packaging material. The kind of stuff that's so far beneath their notice, they won't even bother scanning it. Dr. Vixtrill's form shimmered with what Sarah had come to recognize as amusement. The arrogance of advanced civilizations can be their greatest weakness. They never consider that primitive technologies might hold secrets they don't understand. Sarah grinned. That's what I'm counting on. She pulled up a map of known hegemony sensor stations on her tablet. Now, let's figure out exactly where we need to place our little disruption network. For the next several hours, they worked on calculating optimal placement patterns. Each sheet of bubble wrap would need to be positioned just right to create overlapping fields of quantum interference. It was like planning the world's strangest art installation, except this one would help free humanity from alien-imposed restrictions. There's one more thing, Dr. Vixtrill said as they finished their calculations. The hegemony will eventually realize their sensors are being affected. They'll investigate. By then, it'll be too late, Sarah replied. Once we prove their containment grid isn't infallible, other species might start questioning their authority too. Sometimes you just need one crack to bring down the whole wall. An apt metaphor, Dr. Vixtrill agreed, their crystals glowing with anticipation. Though in this case, the crack will come from popping bubbles. Sarah started carefully rolling up their test sheets of bubble wrap. History is full of revolutions that started with the smallest things. Why not packaging material? As they secured their research and prepared to put their plan into motion, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Somewhere out there, a hegemony official was probably giving a speech about their superior technology and unbreakable control over human expansion. Meanwhile, in a small lab on Ganymede, humanity's resistance was being planned with nothing more than plastic, air, and the simple physics that everyone else had overlooked. Sometimes the best weapons weren't weapons at all. Sometimes they were just bubbles, waiting to be popped. Shipment 7 just cleared hegemony customs at Europa Station, Sarah announced, marking another green checkpoint on the holographic map floating above their workbench. They didn't even open the crates. Dr. Vixtrill's crystalline form pulsed with satisfied blue light. Of course not. Why would the mighty hegemony waste time inspecting primitive human packing materials? 3 weeks had passed since their discovery, and their plan was proceeding perfectly. Cargo ships across the solar system were now recycling their bubble wrap by sending it to designated collection points, all carefully chosen locations that would create their quantum interference network. Latest report from the resistance colonies, Sarah said, scanning her encrypted messages. They've started testing the interference patterns around their settlements. The hegemony's routine scans are coming up completely blank in those areas. Excellent. Dr. Vixtrill moved to their primary research console, bringing up a complex diagram of overlapping quantum fields. Though I must admit, I'm somewhat concerned about the latest sensor readings from the outer system. Sarah looked up from her tablet. What do you mean? The hegemony is mobilizing ships, more than usual. The alien scientists' crystals shifted to a worried purple. They're claiming it's a routine patrol surge, but the numbers suggest otherwise. They can't know about our operation, Sarah said, but she felt a knot forming in her stomach. We've been too careful. Perhaps. Dr. Vixtrill's form flickered thoughtfully. Or perhaps they've detected the general presence of interference, but haven't identified the source. Either way, we may have less time than we thought. Sarah pulled up their distribution map again, studying the network of green checkpoints. We're at about 60% coverage. Is that enough tow? She was interrupted by the station's general announcement system. Attention all personnel. This is Station Command. A hegemony inspection fleet has just entered the Jupiter system. All stations prepare for routine inspection protocols. Routine inspection protocols, my ass, Sarah muttered. She turned to Dr. Vixtrill. How long do we have? The alien scientist's crystals pulsed rapidly as they calculated. At standard approach velocity, approximately 48 Earth hours before they reach Ganymede orbit. Sarah was already moving, pulling up communication channels on her secure terminal. That's not much time to get the rest of the network in place. We don't need the full network, Dr. Vixtrill said, their voice taking on an urgent tone. The current coverage is sufficient to protect the existing resistance colonies. We should focus on concealing our research here before. No, Sarah's voice was firm. We stick to the plan. The colonies aren't just hiding anymore. They're preparing to push back. This is their chance to expand beyond the containment zones, to show the hegemony they can't control us forever. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals shifted through several concerned colors before settling on a determined green. What do you need me to do? Keep working on the interference pattern calculations. I need to know exactly where to place our remaining shipments for maximum effect. Sarah was already sending coded messages to their network of cargo pilots. And maybe see if you can find a way to amplify the effect. We might need more than just passive interference soon. The alien scientist moved to their workbench, where several sheets of bubble wrap were undergone various experiments. I have been conducting some tests on focused bubble rupture sequences. The results are interesting. Sarah looked up. Interesting how? It appears that if we pop multiple bubbles in precisely timed patterns, we can create directed interference waves. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals glowed with excitement. Theoretically, we could use this to actively disrupt hegemony sensor systems, not just hide from them. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. You're saying we could turn our defensive tool into an offensive weapon? In a manner of speaking. Dr. Vixtrill began pulling up test results on their console, though I must point out the delightful irony that we would be attacking the hegemony's most advanced technology with what they consider to be garbage. Sarah laughed despite the tension. That's humanity's specialty. Finding new uses for old things. She looked at their map again, at all the points where their bubble wrap network was already in place. Send me those calculations. I'll have our people start practicing the disruption sequences. You believe they will attempt to use force? Dr. Vixtrill asked, their crystals dimming slightly. The hegemony. Eventually. Sarah's expression hardened. They can't afford to let humans keep expanding. The moment they realize their control is slipping, they'll try to clamp down hard. Then we must be ready. The alien scientist began transferring data to Sarah's terminal. Though I never imagined my career in xenophysics would lead to developing weapons based on packing materials. Lights full of surprises, Sarah said, watching as more green confirmation points appeared on their map. Across the solar system, humans and their allies were preparing for what might be their only chance at true freedom. All because of some plastic bubbles and the arrogance of those who thought themselves too advanced to worry about such simple things. The station's lights dimmed briefly as another announcement came through. Attention all personnel. Hegemony fleet has increased speed. Estimated arrival time now 36 hours. Prepare for extended inspection protocols. Sarah and Dr. Vixtrill shared a look. The race was on. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a fleet of mighty warships was approaching, their commanders completely unaware that their greatest defeat would come not from advanced weapons or superior technology, but from the simple pop of a bubble. The hegemony fleet arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. 12 capital ships, their crystalline hulls refracting Jupiter's light like artificial moons, dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Ganymede's orbit. Their arrival message was broadcast on all frequencies in that characteristically condescending tone Sarah had come to expect from them. Attention human settlements and associated installations. This is High Commander Trax of the Hegemony Compliance Fleet. Our scans have detected unusual quantum variations throughout your assigned zones. Prepare for comprehensive inspection and compliance verification. Sarah stood at the observation window of their hidden lab, watching the massive ships take up positions around the station. "Right on schedule," she muttered, then activated her secure communicator. "All points, operation packaging is go." I repeat, operation packaging is go. Dr. Vikstrol's crystals pulsed with nervous energy as they monitored their sensor displays. The hegemony ships are deploying their primary scanning arrays. The quantum interference network should be activating now. On their monitors, they watched as the first wave of advanced hegemony sensors swept across the Jupiter system and encountered their bubble-wrapped defense grid. The effect was immediate and dramatic. "By the Ancient Ones," Dr. Vikstrol whispered, their form glowing with amazement. "It's working even better than our simulations predicted." The hegemony scan patterns, visible as neat lines of energy on their displays, were fragmenting into chaos as they hit patches of quantum interference. Each carefully placed cache of bubble wrap was creating its own field of disruption, and the overlapping fields were generating patterns of confusion that no algorithm could untangle. "Status report from the resistance colonies," Sarah announced, reading from her secure tablet. "All settlements completely masked from hegemony sensors. They're starting their expansion moves now." The station's comm system crackled again. "Attention all installations. Our initial scans are experiencing technical difficulties. Prepare for direct visual inspection teams. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Sarah smiled grimly. "They're switching to visual scanning, just like we wanted." Indeed. Dr. Vikstrol moved to another console, while their crews are distracted with visual searches. "Our people are moving through the gaps in their sensor coverage," Sarah finished. "How long before they realize what's really happening?" The answer came sooner than expected. Alarms began blaring throughout the station as multiple hegemony shuttles began launching from their capital ships. "Emergency alert," the station's AI announced. "Multiple hegemony enforcement teams are requesting immediate docking access. All personnel prepare for." The message cut off abruptly as the station's power flickered. Sarah looked at Dr. Vikstrol in alarm, but the alien scientist's crystals were glowing with satisfaction. "A small demonstration of our offensive capabilities," they explained, gesturing to a device on their workbench. It looked like nothing more than a simple frame holding several sheets of bubble wrap, but Sarah could see intricate timing circuits connected to each bubble. "The directed interference wave generator." Yes, targeted specifically at their communication and power distribution frequencies. Dr. Vikstrol's crystals sparkled with what Sarah had learned was their version of pride. They're about to discover that their advanced systems are remarkably vulnerable to precisely timed quantum disruptions. On their monitors, they watched as the hegemony shuttles began experiencing their own problems. Their precision guidance systems were failing, forcing them to rely on manual controls. Some were already turning back to their motherships. "Message from the Resistance," Sarah said, checking her communicator. "First wave of settlement expansion successful. They're already setting up new interference fields around the new locations. The hegemony cannot stop what they cannot detect," Dr. Vikstrol observed, "though I suspect they will not accept defeat easily." As if in response to this prediction, the largest hegemony ship began moving closer to the station, its weapon systems visibly charging. "They're going to try to brute force their way through this," Sarah said, watching the massive vessel approach. "Time to show them our last surprise." Dr. Vikstrol's crystals pulsed with anticipation, activating all interference generators. Now, across the Jupiter system, at precisely coordinated moments, Resistance members began systematically popping bubble wrap in the sequences they practiced. Each pop was precisely timed, creating waves of quantum disruption that built upon each other. The effect on the hegemony fleet was devastating. Ships began losing power as their quantum field generators encountered patterns they were never designed to handle. Weapons systems shut down, unable to maintain the precise atomic alignments needed for their energy beams. "Message from High Commander Trax," the station's comm system announced. The once confident voice now sounded distinctly rattled. "We are experiencing unexpected technical difficulties. All inspection teams will temporarily withdraw to assess the situation. Sarah watched as the mighty hegemony ships began retreating to a safer distance, their crews undoubtedly baffled by how their advanced technology was being defeated by something their scanners couldn't even properly detect. "Should we press our advantage?" Dr. Vixtrill asked, their crystals shifting through questioning colors. Sarah shook her head. "No need. They've already lost. They just don't know it yet." She looked at their tactical display, where dozens of new human settlements were already appearing beyond the old containment zones. By the time they figure out what happened, it'll be too late to stop it. The future was changing, one popped bubble at a time. And somewhere in the hegemony's grand fleet, a very confused high commander was about to write a report that would make absolutely no sense to anyone who didn't understand the true power of primitive human packaging materials. 3 months after what historians would later call the bubble wrap revolution, Sarah sat in a conference room aboard the Arcturian diplomatic vessel Crystal Resonance, watching representatives from a dozen different species argue about packaging materials. The humans cannot be allowed to maintain a monopoly on this technology. The hegemony representatives' metallic scales rattled with indignation. The stability of quantum communications throughout the sector is at stake. "Fascinating," Dr. Vixtrill commented from beside her, their crystals shimming with barely contained amusement. They still refuse to use the term bubble wrap in official proceedings. Sarah struggled to keep a straight face. The last few months had been a whirlwind of changes. After the hegemony fleet's embarrassing retreat from Jupiter, the truth about their unbeatable containment grid had spread quickly. Other species that had been chafing under hegemony restrictions began experimenting with their own quantum interference networks. The human delegation has been very clear. The Arcturian ambassador announced, their crystalline form glowing with diplomatic neutrality. They are willing to establish trade agreements for their quantum interference technology, provided all restrictions on human expansion are permanently lifted. Trade agreements. The hegemony representative scales turned a darker shade of purple. For packaging material. For quantum field manipulation technology, Sarah corrected, speaking up for the first time. All eyes and various sensory organs turned to her. The fact that it comes in bubble form is merely a matter of efficient design. Dr. Vixtrill's crystals pulsed with silent laughter beside her. They both knew that humans had already started mass-producing new forms of bubble wrap, some designed specifically for maximum quantum interference. The fact that it could still be used to protect fragile items during shipping was just a bonus. "This is unprecedented," a representative from the collective mind of Proxima stated, their holographic form flickering thoughtfully. "Never in our records has a species weaponized their packaging materials." "We didn't weaponize anything," Sarah replied calmly. "We simply found a new use for something we already had. Humanity has a long history of that." The conference room erupted in multiple conversations, some in languages Sarah's translator couldn't even handle. She used the moment to check her tablet, where reports from across the solar system showed human settlements continuing to flourish beyond the old containment zones. The hegemony couldn't stop them now, not without admitting that their advanced technology could be defeated by plastic bubbles. "Order, please," the Arcturian ambassador chimed, their resonance cutting through the chaos. "We must address the larger implications of this development. The human demonstration of quantum field manipulation through mechanical means suggests our understanding of physics may be incomplete." "That's one way of putting it," Dr. Vixtrill muttered privately to Sarah. "Another would be that we've been so focused on complex solutions that we missed the simple ones." The hegemony representative was still protesting, but the humans didn't even know what they were doing. They stumbled upon this by accident. "Did we?" Sarah asked innocently. "Or did we simply approach the problem from a different direction? Sometimes the best solutions are the ones everyone else overlooks because they seem too simple." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was already certain. The hegemony's power was broken, not by force or advanced technology, but by humans doing what they did best, finding new uses for old things, turning weaknesses into strengths and refusing to accept artificial limitations. Later, as Sarah and Dr. Vixtrill walked through the crystal resonances corridors, the alien scientist's form glowed with curious colors. "I've been analyzing some other Earth packaging materials," they said casually. "Did you know that your species' packing peanuts generate some very interesting static electrical patterns?" Sarah stopped walking. "Dr. Vixtrill, are you suggesting?" "I'm merely conducting thorough scientific research," they replied, their crystals twinkling mischievously. "After all, who knows what other revolutionary discoveries might be hiding in your species' primitive technologies?" Sarah laughed and reached into her pocket, pulling out a small sheet of bubble wrap she always carried now. She popped one bubble, watching with satisfaction as nearby quantum sensors flickered in confusion. "You know what the best part is," she said as they continued walking. "Even after everything that's happened, most species still think bubble wrap is just packaging material." "And that," Dr. Vixtrill replied, "is precisely why humans are becoming such interesting neighbors in this galaxy. You see possibilities where others see only simplicity." Behind them, the diplomatic conference continued, as representatives of mighty civilizations debated the implications of plastic bubbles. And somewhere on Earth, in countless factories and warehouses, workers continued producing rolls of bubble wrap, blissfully unaware that they were manufacturing one of the most revolutionary technologies in the galaxy. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest things. Sometimes a revolution comes not with a bang, but with a pop.